And today we're talking about experiencing freedom collectively as the beloved community. This weekend happens to be a celebration of the life of Dr. Martin Luther King. And Dr. King is most noted for creating this idea of beloved community. The term beloved community is first attributed to the philosopher and theologian Josiah Royce, who founded the Fellowship of Reconciliation in the early 1900s. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a member of this fellowship, and he adopted the idea, the core value of the Fellowship of Reconciliation, as the beloved community for his vision. On the King Center website, it describes the beloved community this way. Dr. King's beloved community is a global vision in which all people can share in the wealth of the earth. In the beloved community, poverty, hunger, and homelessness will not be tolerated because international standards of human decency will not allow it. Racism and all forms of discrimination, bigotry, and prejudice will be replaced by an all-inclusive spirit of sisterhood and brotherhood. The beloved community, this idea that Dr. King brought forth, is a place where people meet to seek the highest and greatest good for everyone. It is a place where people are free to express themselves in their own unique and authentic ways. And it is a place where we seek to understand each other rather than to focus on and find all of our differences. Historically, differences have been used to separate, to point out how others are not like ourselves, and to create a certain power structure. If we can point out how someone is different than us, then it's easy to go to someone is less than us. And if they're less than us, then we must be over them. And so it creates this whole power structure that has perpetuated throughout all of history. I believe that we gain true freedom to be our authentic expression when we unite with others in spite of our differences. The noted author Bell Hooks, in her book Killing Rage, puts it this way. Beloved community is formed not by the eradication of difference, but by its affirmation. By each of us claiming the identities and the cultural legacies that shape who we are and how we live in the world. This beloved community that I'm speaking of here today is not some utopian commune where we all live together and isolate ourselves from the rest of the world. That's been tried many, many, many times in many, many different ways with varying degrees of success and failure. The beloved community that we're speaking of is a community of people who come together under a united vision with a willingness to take action where it's needed. In 1876, Felix Adler developed something very similar to the beloved community. He called it the ethical culture. And he said that there were two important ideas for ethical culture communities. The first one is a vision of how to live differently, and secondly, a willingness to practice that vision in our own life. Reflection and action. Vision and commitment. We must be willing to take action on that which has been revealed to us to do. Or, as we like to say here at Centers for Spiritual Living, we need to treat and move our feet. We need both things for change to happen. It says this on the Ethical Culture website. Action without reflection is potentially a nightmare. Reflection without action is potentially a daydream. We need, instead, active reflection and reflective action. We need to pair them as partners. It takes both to move us forward. It takes a willingness to see what needs to be changed, or the vision to see what needs to be changed, and the willingness to actually make the changes. And in order to create the beloved community and achieve this true freedom for all, we must be willing to make changes. The movement led by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and so many other amazing leaders is all about change through nonviolence. One of their main focuses was changing laws that were unjust. And our world has moved forward in so many ways because of changes to those laws. The laws were changed because it was the right and proper thing for them to be changed. The standards of human decency would no longer allow them to exist. These laws were unjust, they were discriminatory, and often they were life-threatening. The laws were changed. But the mindset, the belief systems, and the fears that ran rampant in many people did not change. And I believe that this is the very thing that has caused most of the divisiveness that we have experienced in the last decade. Certainly most of the divisiveness that has happened here in our own country. Our country ended slavery with the Civil War, but it didn't change the mindset of many of the people who were benefiting from the horrors of slavery. The laws changed, but the oppression has continued for almost 150 years. Because the mindset of many people involved in this situation has not changed. Laws have been changed about all kinds of things: gender equality, marriage equality, civil rights, and privileges of many different kinds of people. But the mindset that created those laws in the first place, well, a lot of it is still out there. And so oftentimes, even though the law has been changed, the oppression still continues. The standards of human decency haven't quite caught up with the laws. So Dr. King advocated building the beloved community through a practice of nonviolence. The beloved community was for him a realistic, achievable goal that could be attained by a critical mass of people committed to and trained in the philosophy and the methods of nonviolence. That's from the King Center website. He believed that this critical mass of people that he speaks of was needed before the mindset changed enough for true change to happen. The laws could get adjusted, but we needed that critical mass of people before the mindset starts to change. Dr. King believed that this was achieved through the practice of nonviolence. And so he studied Mahatma Gandhi's method of nonviolence, which has 6 core principles. The first principle is nonviolence is a way of life for courageous people. It is an act of courage to nonviolently resist evil. Nonviolence seeks to win friendship and understanding. The end product of nonviolence is redemption and reconciliation. It is what we get when we seek to understand instead of find differences. Nonviolence seeks to defeat injustice, not people. As we're practicing nonviolence, we recognize that the people that have done us wrong, or the people that we might call evil, are also victims. We're not about defeating the people. We're about defeating the injustice. Nonviolence holds that suffering can educate and transform. Nonviolence willingly accepts the consequences of its acts, and it uses those consequences to educate and to transform. Nonviolence chooses love instead of hate. Nonviolence resists violence to the spirit as well as to the body. Nonviolent love is active, not passive. And it doesn't sink to the level of the hater. Love restores community and resists injustice. Nonviolence recognizes the fact that all of life is interrelated. And finally, nonviolence believes that the universe is on the side of justice. Those who practice nonviolence have a deep and abiding faith that justice will eventually win. Dr. King believed that the core value necessary for creating a beloved community is love. And he used the Greeks' way of speaking about a certain kind of love. So the Greeks had three main forms of love. They had eros, which is the romantic love. They had philia, which is affection between friends. And then they had agape. Agape love is described as understanding and redeeming goodwill for all. It's an overflowing love which is purely spontaneous and unmotivated and very creative. The love of God operating in the human heart is agape love. Dr. King said agape does not begin by discriminating between worthy and unworthy people. It begins by loving others for their sakes and makes no distinction between a friend and an enemy. It is directed toward both. Agape love is seeking to preserve and create community. Agape love is the root of the beloved community. And nonviolence is rooted in this form of love. Now, it can by some be mistaken for passivity, for letting people walk all over us, for pushing us aside, trampling on our needs and our rights and our desires. Nonviolence is not about avoiding this kind of stuff. Nonviolence is not about avoiding conflict. Nonviolence is not non-conflict. Conflict is necessary for change. Without conflict, there is no motivation for change. After all, if everything's just going along peacefully for everybody, there's no conflict. Building a community, even a beloved community, creates conflict. There are all kinds of decisions to be made about all manner of things in which many people hold strong opinions, desires, and needs. I find that oftentimes that we think we know how something should be, a certain way that it should be, and the way it makes total and logical sense in our minds. And then when we share it with others, we're met with a lot of opposition. Even when we think we're being rational and well-meaning people, what we think or how we think something should be is often quite different from what other people think it should be. And I actually find that quite shocking at times. It's not that I'm secure in my rightness, but it just seems like it makes such sense to me. So how could it be so different for someone else? All of this idea of what should be for each person creates a degree of conflict in our lives. But we can't have conflict without change. Change can be uncomfortable. Change can cause a disruption in the status quo, in the lives of all the individuals involved. But honestly, there can be no forward movement, no shifting of conditions without the willingness to change. We've seen that happening in our own individual lives. We see it happening in our relationships. And the same thing is happening in the communities that we have. Without a willingness to change, there can be no forward movement. It is very, very important for us to begin to get comfortable with change. And more importantly, to be in the discomfort as long as we need to be with these shifting conditions until the change actually takes hold. Afeni Sakur, an American activist, puts it this way: you can't change anything without causing some degree of disruption. It's impossible. That's exactly what change is. Some people are uncomfortable with the disruption that change causes. But the disruption is necessary if anything is going to change. Here at Centers for Spiritual Living, we say it this way: change is the nature of creation. In order to create, we must change. And so to create the beloved community, to create an ethical culture, we have to change. We have to use our practices of meditation, contemplation, and visioning to discern what change is needed, what that change might look like, and more importantly, what is mine to do in the process of this creation of something new. And then we have to be willing to take action on what has been revealed. Reflection and action. Discernment and movement. Change is the nature of creation. Where am I being called to change? And where am I being called to love? Let's take this into prayer. And so taking a moment and just turning within to that place of peace within my being. That place where I feel connected. That place from which I am sourced. I know that there's only one thing here. There ever is only one. I know that is the power and the presence and the action and the activity of that divine, creative, loving intelligence that has brought everything into existence. The isness and the allness and the fullness of all life abides within that one. There is no separation from it. For each one of us is that unique manifestation of it. We are created in the perfection and the wholeness of the divine. It is animating our lives. It is living itself through us in all that we are and all that we do. And so knowing this truth, I open myself up to a greater expression of that divine love, that agape love, that love that creates the beloved community. I allow it to grow within me, to pour forth from me, to show up in all of my relations, all of my interactions, throughout all of the day. I know that there is a willingness within me to be that beloved community. And I feel that very same willingness within all of the members of Center for Spiritual Living Greater Las Vegas. I know that each one of us has been placed here perfectly, uniquely, and divinely to do the work that we are called to do. And I know it is through deep listening and discernment that work is revealed. And I know that each one of us has within us the ability to take action upon that which has been revealed, that is uniquely ours to do. And I know that all of this action, all of this contemplation, all of this agape love is a blessing to our entire community. And I just give great thanks for it. Knowing it is showing up perfectly, I let it be. And so it is. Amen.